very good evening to all of you. So, first of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the organizing committee for giving me this opportunity on this special occasion to share my experience. And as a novice academician and a researcher, I'm feeling privileged as well as thankful to share my journey with all of you. So, to start with my presentation, I would first like to express and pay my tribute to these ladies, these wonderful ladies who are in the forefront of the science and technology, who led the path that we are following nowadays with, and that made this path smoother. So all are remarkable, and they are esteemed scientists in their own way. But I had a special, um, feeling for Marie Curie. Not just because she led the way and she had this exemplary research contribution to the radio physics, but she also raised two brilliant daughters who supposed to be, and in later point of time the elder daughter Irene became the Nobel laureate along with her husband Frederick. So that so when we talk about these women, we celebrate their work, we appreciate their work, and the behind what happened, I mean the hard work and all those barriers, the constraints that they laid to achieve all those things, that remain the stories that many and millions to follow, to get inspired to, and for ages to come. So I salute to all those women. Now, coming over to my background, so I was raised in I come from a middle class family located at Howrah, West Bengal. So I was blessed to be brought up in a very modern and loving family. So I could explore all my potentials without any fear and barrier as I grew up in my early childhood. And so I this concept of gender inequality was never prominent to me. My mother is a teacher and my father is a retired bank employee. I have a brother, but this gender equality inequality just came to my understanding when I entered my college. And surprisingly, I observed that there is only 13 number of girl students in my BTech, right? That was WBUT, West Bengal University of Technology, one college under that university. And more interestingly, when I then went for my master's and I cleared my GATE exam and got myself admitted to IIT Guwahati, I saw that I am inclusive five students in the batch, female students in the batch. So that time, I mean, it came to my mind that how I am privileged and what I got in my life, right? So IIT days, the early IIT days were not very smooth. Of course, coming from that background, from that college in West Bengal, I had a lot to learn. I had a lot to cope up. Now, living first time experience in hostel days and new friends, new environment, new teachers, so everything was not very smooth at the beginning. But I had a wonderful bunch of friends, and I got extremely good teachers who showed me, who guided me the way, the right direction to promote this research and excellence in academia. So I got, so first time my serious research exposure was in IIT Guwahati. And as I was opting my MTech, MTP topic, so I was given a problem of, say, in a distributed algorithm domain. So there was, the problem was simple, that there was this uh, two trees. So in computer science domain, we call it like the DFS tree and the BFS tree, right? So there are these nodes, right? If you consider them as the computer, as the processor, or even whatever, nodes having some processing capability, and they can communicate with each other using the message passing paradigm. So these nodes form the data gathering tree because they are comprising the network, they are sensing the environment, they are collecting the data, generating the data, and sending it to the base station. Now this root is the this node number one. As you see, the root of the tree is supposedly be the base station where all this data from all the nodes will be gathered and delivered. So if you can form such a tree, and if it is a DFS tree, so depending on the change in the network load, sometimes a DFS tree would be convenient for you, sometimes a BFS tree would be convenient for you. Now, I am not going into the detail of what is the properties of each of these trees so that it goes or can adapt to the system environment and the changing load. Of course, there are certain requirements, but if you can switch, right, the idea is if you can switch between this in a very transparent manner so that it's not hampering the application whichever is running on, and also you are taking care of the redundancy in data and the data loss, because whenever you are changing this path that it is making up, say path from 7 to 3, when you are breaking this link and making a new link from 7 to 6, there will obviously going to affect the data transmission which are in transit, and there may be a potential data loss. So how to address these challenges, how to adapt the load changes in the network and dynamically switch between this DFS tree and BFS tree, that was the problem. And that was more like algorithmic approach, algorithmic design approach that I opted to work in my MTB. So once I was exploring this world of wireless sensor network seemed to be very much fascinating to me. So what happens in wireless sensor network? And let me tell you, this was training in say 20 years back. So 2000, 2001 was the years or during that 5 to 6 years around that window. So it was trending like the coolest apps were building on this wireless sensor network, and it was considered to be the inexpensive and automated tool that you can apply to solve multiple problems and provide the automated solution. So how does it happen? There will be a set of sensor nodes. Sensor means they can sense the environmental parameters, whatever you can think. So say temperature, ambient light, humidity, anything you can consider. But these are resource constrained devices, very much fragile in nature, and so they are operated mainly on battery. So if they generate or sense this physical phenomena, they generate the data in say digital data, and they are sensing and they are communication capable. That means they can forward this data to other nodes. Now there is, if you consider a large scale wireless sensor network where you can apply this type of sensor network, say for monitoring, mainly for monitoring, habitat monitoring or surveillance, right? For threat detection, in a large scale wireless sensor network in an outdoor setup mostly. So they form a data network. Okay, so one node senses the data, forwards it to other. That particular nodes on behalf of others forward it to another node, and this is like a chain wise manner. The data goes to the gateway, which actually compiles and send it to the internet for further analysis. That is the main concept of sensor node. Now there were a lot of problems, there were a lot of challenges to focus, like energy efficiency, how you can provide this or like contribute to the communication aspects or the computing aspects of the sensor node so that the network lifetime can be increased. Okay, if all these sensor nodes have the sensing coverage, so they can sense up to a certain diameter of, say, a circular region. Now, if one or two sensors, because I said already that these sensors nodes are fragile, so if they one or two may die at any time, so how are you going to guarantee that the coverage will be maintained? Similarly, the connectivity issues, how you place the nodes, right? Because where you are trying to opt for solution and those are inaccessible terrain, you cannot think of a solution that people will go physically and place all those nodes. So how are you going to design a solution placement strategy so that you can achieve all those connectivity and coverage criteria? Then nodes can be mobile, how to cope up with those kind of situation that some more nodes are leaving a community, some nodes are joining, how you adopt the synchronization aspects, that all the nodes are having maintaining the similar clock dimension and all, how you enforce the quality of service for varying applications with varying requirements. So all those issues were there that needed to be handled in wireless sensor network. And trust me, this field is huge. You can get umpteen number of research papers if you just look into the Google Scholar. Now, my PhD thesis, as I converted, I took a lot of interest in this wireless sensor network, and I was actually feeling confident at that point of time. So I converted my MTech to PhD. So my PhD thesis title was tree-based data gathering from sensors, topology management, sustaining QoS. So that was in this regard only that I focused on the data gathering tree management problem, where dealing with the fault tolerance issues, then how you manage the sensor placement, sensor deployment strategies, so that there you can achieve some advantage to improve the network lifetime. And then I tried to look up for few use cases, prominent use cases like intelligent transportation. So if you apply wireless sensor network for traffic estimation or say road incident detection, so what will be the difficulties, how you are going to place the sensors so that the with minimum number of or minimum overhead you can actually achieve this coverage and connectivity issues. Then another use case was critical infrastructure. So like any industry automation, power, say process automation in any industry, or say grid, right? Energy, water grid, then any kind of power plant. So all are, or any kind of building, all are considered to be critical infrastructure which are essential for the socio-economic foundation for any country. Now, if you use the sensor network to automatically monitor or provide the surveillance, so you are supposed to enforce a few QoS criteria and also to satisfy this, provide the fault tolerance mechanism. So that were the topics that I tried to contribute in my PhD. Now, during my PhD days, the first and key motivation for my research was, to travel and visit world. So all these places that I traveled for, that those trips were funded by some research grant or some sponsored project or somewhere. So that was financial things were covered, and I also get to meet people, listen to wonderful, fantastic people across the world who were dominating the world, who were the leading scientists. I got to know, interact with people, and I got to know what is the world class standard of research and where I am lagging. Like keeping myself within the society Guwahati, this very regional aspect, that were not going to give me the this bigger aspect that how and what is going on. And on addition to that, that intensive was to visit other countries, right? So traveling is always fun. Now, that was my primary motivation, and that gave me a lot of enthu to push towards publication And day and night, when I used to stay in the campus, I used to work towards my, so that I can get some solid results to publish. So that was my first motivation to complete my PhD, and a very first uh, point to focus. But life was not that smooth. So once I submitted my my defended my thesis and joined my first job at BITS Pilani, Hyderabad. So it was like the hard reality broke. Like I thought that I know nothing. So I did my PhD, and still I'm feeling so empty. That means that whatever I am trying to propose, whatever problem I'm trying to think, it is like the same loophole. I am not going beyond my thesis contribution. I'm not going beyond this wireless sensor network, and I cannot think anything beyond that. And also I cannot teach to my satisfaction. So I was completely like, I was feeling horrible. And what I should be doing that point of time, so 2014-15, where that kind of experience, I just tried to hang on. And then the best option that came to my as life provided me was to take a break. So I just quit. I went to USA. Unfortunately, that time, my husband, because I got married in 2014, before after just completing my PhD. So my husband was my colleague at that point of time, and he opted for a postdoc position. So he opted for that position. I thought that why don't I also go and look for some possibilities, explore some possibilities. So I went there with lot of expectation and enthusiasm, and I involved myself in interdisciplinary work. So that is the first time I came to realize that what I need and what I am lacking, right? So bridging the gap, like remaining within the computer science and just trying to do an incremental research from which I have done in my thesis, is not going to help me or anybody. So that break was essentially needed for me to get back to my understanding about myself, exploring those interdisciplinary areas, those bioinformatics, those smart health related domains, the transportation domain, where I can come up with the potential solution. And then when I joined IIIT Guwahati in 2016, eventually, that was the first time I just fell in love all over again with my work. Like the teaching, the quality time I was spending with my students, the research that I was trying to do, everything just seemed fantastic. So by that time also I got this refreshing experience, and I thought like this WSN is nothing but the basic core of what we call today is the IoT. Right? There is these things, there is this internet. So what happened exactly? These things got more powerful because these IoT devices are not anymore constrained, and this communication technology, this connectivity has become more powerful. This is what happened. And then we put the intelligence onto it, these things, so that our life becomes more smoother and smarter. That is the main idea. So why don't I just try to explore? Because here I have to now look at the multidisciplinary aspects. I also need to know the domain knowledge. If I talk about the smart health, I need to know about it. If I want to find out the psychological analysis of a person, of an elderly people, I need to know, I need to have this understanding about how they behave, right? It is not necessarily and sufficient to know only the knowledge of computer science. So I pushed myself to collaborate with a lot of people and try to understand and develop an expertise in this particular domain, what we call the edge computing, which is nothing but the cloud was there. Now you are bringing the cloud facilities to closer to the things, which is the source of data. Okay, all these IoT devices, the wearables that we are using, all the ambient sensors that are there placed in an infrastructure, so all are the data sources. And if you bring the cloud facilities closer to this IoT devices, what will happen? You will can process this data with less amount of time, in less amount of time, and you can also provide better quality of services in terms of, say, I want that whenever there is any person in my office, the light will automatically get switched on. This is a simple example how we are visualizing the things. So the sensors are there and they will sense that there is a presence of human being in my office. And at the same time, they will trigger the actuator to switch on the light, right? So this duration of detecting an event and taking an action, so decision making and triggering the action, the time duration in between has to be very short for critical infrastructure, for which the time, the latency should be very small. And we are focusing on, we are actually leading towards, moving towards those kind of cool applications for smart applications, which are not really tolerant to any kind of delay. And also on top of it, we need to put intelligence. Now intelligence require analytics, and that too with lot of AI algorithm, machine learning tools, which are heavily dependent on the computational resources. So what we can offer in the edge computing to provide that particular resources and get the decision, get the inference at very low cost and low time. Right. So that was the motivation of this whole computation paradigm shift, computational paradigm shift. And that leads to the Ubicomp horizon. So when I was in the IIIT Guwahati and I was exploring this particular domain, I was fascinated by the potential of Ubicomp computing, ubiquitous computing. And so I designed this elective course. And there is nothing better way, there is no better way of learning a particular topic other than teaching it. Okay, so I designed this particular ubiquitous computing course. So Mark Wager is a prominent scientist. He was a scientist in Xerox PARC. So he is known to be the father of ubiquitous computing. So his vision of Ubicom states as the most profound technologies are those that disappear, right? And they weave themselves into the fabric of everyday life until they are indistinguishable from it. So we are now focusing to design and develop such a technology which will be invisible and still provide us the smart services. So the key philosophical change that we need to think about, the center of attention, this laptop, smartphone, which we are interacting as usual to get certain services, they are at the center of our attention. But we want to shift to a peripheral attention where we won't be interacting with these devices, we won't be interacting with any machine, as a matter of fact, explicitly, right? So they will be invisible, but still will be providing us the services. The mobility of the devices, because we won't be able to consider or think such a device which are static. That's not a feasible solution to look at. Context aware. Now every individual is different, and when we are considering the personalized service, means the services that these smart devices will be providing us will be very much specific to what I require. Okay, my interest, my experience is way different than anybody else in this world. So that is not even going to match with my husband even, right? So that is why every device, as people are using that and expect to have this context aware and personalized services, that is actually opening up a loophole for privacy invasiveness, right? So we also need to look at that aspects. There are multiple technology enablers to achieve this Ubicom services. Social sensing, ambient sensing, crowdsourcing. The Google Map, the technology is mostly relying on this crowdsourcing aspects, the low energy and low latency communication with the this 5G and beyond, and other new technological inventions like NB-IoT, like Sigfox, like LoRa. We are trying to get the communication support with higher data rate and more reliability. That is the main purpose. So first independent on this basis, the first independent work that I did after my PhD was to get a project, sponsored project from SARB, and the project was about sensory data collection and edge-based processing for smart building monitoring. So we were focusing on a few specific things about data collection at the very end devices. First one to understand, so context is a very much abstract thing. So if you can model it, if you can come up with a proper um, framework for data acquisition, that will be very much useful for multiple service providers, because that is the future when the infrastructure will be shared among multiple service providers, and they will provide various kind of services running at the edge, right? So how you select the ideal sensors so that you can have a win-win scenario, that not too much redundancy to be sent to the edge server, as well as you also guarantee that there won't be there will be a relevant information, at least the sensors that you are. And as I already mentioned, that sensors are fragile, so they are bound to give me uh, incorrect data. So how you can handle all those at the very uh, edge level, right? Then I set up a test bed. So that was my very during my PhD, I was inspired by this Indriya test bed that were running at that point of time in NUS. So all those Taylor's B modes were set up nicely in a multi-layered architecture. And back at that time, so I thought that someday, some point of time, I'm going to set up a test bed and do my research on top of it. So I did at that, but surprisingly, I came to know that Telos B were not available that point of time. They stopped uh, just building it up. So we went for Raspberry Pi modes, right? So that is my test bed still running at IIIT Guwahati. There are 30 nodes and placed at various places, classroom, this is the staircase, there are libraries, this is the hostel, sorry, the canteen, right? So these various nodes are equipped with CO2 sensors, motion sensor, motion detection, and for DHT22 for humidity, temperature, and pressure sensor. So the purpose is to understand the crowd analytics, indoor crowd estimation, density, crowd level activity recognition. So that were the research problems that we were looking into. Current research highlights, I would like to say that I am currently looking at two prominent problems which have a lot of potential and very much, you know, exploratory stages at this point of time. A lot to do, just you need to be creative. So multi-access edge computing is one that is closely tied with the 5G technology, but the most important thing to look at here is how you migrate the service. So service migration, how you offload the task. So if I am, say, I'm engaged in a video gaming, high resolution video gaming that involves a lot of AR, VR um, activities, and I want to offload some of the task from my device to the nearest edge server, so that my phone battery gets saved, right? So that is the purpose. So there will be a lot of such applications going on in the end devices aspect, and how we can perform this, take this decision. So be it, you can model it as a decision problem, you can model it as optimization problem, that how and what kind of task would be optimally placed to the server, so that to also take care of the resources and other aspects. Then human activity recognition. So I'm currently looking at, it has got much many potential, and mostly people uh, target this problem to solve from vision point of view, that when you capture the video streaming of a person and try to um, annotate or analyze the frames, the video frames, to understand the activity. But we are looking at this problem from where the sensory data will be collected from wearables, smartphone sensors, right? The passive in nature. So they will be, so that is what I told you. My first motivation is to remain in the Ubicom vision. So keep it in mind. I will always try to come from or focus on the sensory domains that will be as much passive as possible and not intervene with the users as a very front. And there are a few other exploratory areas which I'm currently focusing. So for the sake of time, I'll try to keep it, just keep this. So to sum up, my research directions or key interest areas are in the IoT, edge computing, ubiquitous computing, sensory data analytics, and any kind of smart city applications that you think are having some socio-economic impact in our lives and will be beneficial for our society, for the humankind. So I would love to indulge in those problems. Research philosophy, I try to focus, few points while doing the research. So first one is to involve in collaborative and interdisciplinary research, so that the problem that I am looking at from one angle can get the multiple dimension. If I collaborate with people, the how I look at that problem and the flavor that I add onto it gets amplified, if that is interdisciplinary and collaborative in nature. Currently I am focusing more on quality than the quantity in publication. We'll try to focus in the novel idea and the feasible solution. So coming from the systems background, I will always try to look at the problems that will be feasible, that will be practical, and have, at the very end, you will be able to implement that, and that will be like a working prototype. Sustainable development, of course, that will be not having too much impact on our environment, and having some value, some constructive value to the societal well-being. So to the end, these are my self-sponsored two projects where I act as a PI. Obviously, one must accept the roles and responsibilities of the mother for raising the responsible citizens for the future, right? So I signed up for it, and people often ask me that how you manage. Well, I won't lie, I'm not really managing well. I'm always trying to balance, and in my opinion, that is actually good, because there is nothing like optimality, and nobody can achieve that because it's a multi-objective optimization problem, and that's known to be NP-hard. So I'm just trying to cope up. I'm just trying to be better, improve myself every day, and balance well, so that for better future. So that's all from my side. Thank you all. If you have any query, you can write to me. If you have some problem, you are always welcome. That I will love to discuss with you. So if you have any question, please feel free to ask.
Hello,
Yes.
Chetna, it was a wonderful talk. I really enjoyed.
Thank you, Dr.
I just have one question for you. So it was a wonderful journey. I really liked the way you transitioned from a typical computer science research to interdisciplinary research, and you talked about your very first independent problem. It was very nice hearing all the conversation. So I just want to know a little bit more on what are your plans for using your expertise for, let's say, sustainable development, because this is something which
Mhm.
also I also strive for. Like I'm also working on certain such areas. So I would like to know your perspective on this in a bit more. You can elaborate a little bit more on already you have talked about it, but little bit if you can say something on that.
Yes, yes, definitely. Thank you for your question. So, regarding the sustainable development, my primary focus is to look at, two aspects. So, one is energy. When I'm trying to design or develop any kind of application that would require the intervention of some devices, say, be it the wearables or the smartphones, the solution should be to reduce the or to make it more computational, computationally um, like advantageous, so that it does not, from the communication point of view, from the computation point of view, in both the aspects the energy reduction is possible. And that is one aspect I will be looking at for designing or devising any kind of solution. That is one aspect. Another thing is the privacy. So nowadays people are, I mean, even there is a trade off. If you want to get the context aware or customized services, it is more essential that as much as possible data you capture from the devices, because data collection is a laborious job, and this is one time affair. So we tend to collect as much as possible, right? But from the privacy point of view, as we are saying that nothing is safe, right? So every whatever we upload in our as a digital document, as a digital content in the web, so that remains there forever. So that way people also are not aware of their privacy scope. They don't really understand the boundaries, or what happens in social media. So many a times we get exposed to this kind of uh, data, uh, privacy invasive, say activities, and we get exposed to all this mechanisms. So it compromising, right? It compromising to our identity, to our individuality, and our personal space. So that way I would like to thrive to come up with the solution, because this is also a very abstract area that only the policy making and from those aspects it is possible. But and also all the people who are involved, all the stakeholders who are involved in this particular application, not only the users but the application provider, the service providers, and all the third party providers who are in between this chain, all are involved and share the equal responsibility. But I'd like to take more, you know intervention, and try to find out how to come up with some solution, so that I can protect this personal space of individual who are not really, uh, I mean, happening nowadays, which are not happening.
Thank you. Thank you. Just one more thing that I wanted to, of course, the perspective that you've talked about is slightly different from what actually I was thinking in terms of environment. For example,
Hmm.
there's been a lot of use of smartphones these days, and of course, the technologies require the usage of smartphone and the integration
Hmm.
of it. But then in the race of having the best smartphones in hand and the best
Hmm.
software in hand, there has been a very a huge rise in the market of smartphones and mobile phones, which is a big burden
Yes.
on the environment, particularly when we look at the PCBs and other stuff that is used in
Hmm.
smartphones. And countries like India, it acts as a dumping ground. So most of the developed
Mm.
nations just pack their e-waste, send it to landfill in, in the developing.
Yeah, true, true.
So
Yeah,
how to maybe motivate the masses towards optimal utilization of the computational resources that they have, such that
yes.
they are not in the race of having the best device in their hand, but the best usage of the device in their hand. It is more of the utilization than having the best device.
That's
So
a very interesting point to look at. Yes, of course, I agree with you. And there are a lot of scope to focus and contribute also. So I can talk to you separately in IDRP domain in this regard, and I would love to.
Yeah, actually, the idea is that in case you have a very simple smartphone with a very, uh, um, mediocre features, but it can still do all the smart things that are around you,
Mm.
then that will
Mhm.
be enough for the masses to continue with their old phones and
Yeah.
and that is
And infrastructure sharing is another good option that
correct.
somewhat contributing or inclined to the sustainable development what you were referring in that manner. So when I say that I'm not going to set up a new uh, infrastructure for another kind of services rather than using the same infrastructure for multiple services, so that way we have to come up with certain uh, data handling mechanism so that this safety, security, privacy, and also the mutual conflict among all the stakeholders can be maintained, right? So there is some
Exactly.
scope to work. Yeah.